Across our planet lie buried secrets that have waited centuries, sometimes millennia, to reveal their stories. From golden pharaoh masks gleaming in forgotten tombs, to entire armies of clay warriors standing silent guard. From frozen mummies preserved in ice, to ancient computers that challenge everything we thought we knew about the past. These discoveries don't just fill museum cases, they shatter our assumptions, rewrite history books, and force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that our ancestors were far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. Tonight, we're diving into the 30 most amazing archaeological discoveries ever made, finds so extraordinary that they've changed how we see human civilization itself. We'll explore treasures that sparked international headlines and mysteries that still baffle scientists today. And here's what makes this journey truly fascinating. Each of these discoveries happened by accident. A farmer digging a well, a hiker taking shelter from a storm, workers clearing land for construction. One moment, they're going about their ordinary day. The next, they're staring at something that will revolutionize our understanding of the past forever. So sit back, relax, and join us on this exploration of these amazing discoveries as you prepare to drift off to sleep. And you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before that happens. Now let's begin with perhaps the most famous archaeological discovery of all time. One that turned a relatively unknown British archaeologist into a household name and gave the world its most recognizable symbol of ancient Egypt. Tutankhamun's tomb, November 4th, 1922, the Valley of the Kings, Egypt. British archaeologist Howard Carter had been searching for years, funded by the wealthy Lord Carnarvon, desperately hoping to find something significant before his funding ran out. Most experts believed the valley had been thoroughly explored, its secrets already plundered by ancient tomb robbers. Carter was down to his final season when his water boy stumbled upon a step carved into the rock. What followed was one of the most dramatic moments in archaeological history. As Carter carefully cleared away debris and peered through a small hole into the darkness beyond, Lord Carnarvon asked impatiently, "Can you see anything?" Carter's reply would become legendary. Yes, wonderful things. What Carter had discovered was the intact tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, a relatively minor king who ruled Egypt for just 9 years before dying at age 19 around 1323 BCE. But this minor pharaoh's tomb contained treasures beyond imagination. Over 5,000 artifacts packed into 4 small rooms, including the most famous archaeological find in history, Tutankhamun's solid gold death mask. The mask alone weighs over 20 pounds of pure gold, inlaid with precious stones and bearing the serene face of the boy king. But that was just the beginning. Inside the tomb lay golden chariots, jeweled daggers, elaborate furniture, clothing, food, wine, and even board games to entertain the pharaoh in the afterlife. The mummy itself was wrapped in layers of linen and adorned with golden amulets, lying within a series of nested coffins, the innermost made of solid gold, weighing nearly 300 pounds. What made this discovery truly extraordinary wasn't just the wealth it contained, but what it revealed about ancient Egyptian beliefs and craftsmanship. The tomb provided an unfiltered glimpse into how Egyptians prepared for the afterlife, their sophisticated understanding of preservation, and their incredible artistic abilities. Every object told a story, from ceremonial weapons that were never meant for battle to miniature boats designed to carry the pharaoh's soul across celestial waters. The discovery also launched what became known as Tutmania, a global fascination with ancient Egypt that continues today. Museums worldwide drew record crowds to see travelling exhibitions of the treasures. The tomb's discovery coincided with the birth of modern media, and newspapers around the world followed every development with breathless excitement. But perhaps most remarkably, the tomb had remained virtually untouched for over 3,000 years. While other royal tombs had been ransacked by ancient grave robbers, Tutankhamun's burial place had been hidden beneath debris from later construction, protecting its contents through millennia of political upheaval, foreign invasions, and natural disasters. Number 2. The Terracotta Army. March 1974, Xi'an, China. Local farmers were digging a well during a drought when their shovels struck something hard. What they thought might be pottery fragments turned out to be pieces of life-sized clay warriors. They had stumbled upon one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. The Terracotta Army of China's first emperor, Xin Zhui. What emerged from the earth was an underground military formation unlike anything ever seen. Approximately 8,000 individual clay soldiers, each one unique, standing in battle formation, as they had for over 2,000 years. But these weren't crude figurines. Each warrior was meticulously crafted, standing 6 feet tall with detailed facial features, elaborate armor, and individual expressions that suggest they may have been modeled after real soldiers. The army wasn't alone. Archaeologists uncovered clay horses with flowing manes and detailed harnesses, wooden chariots with bronze fittings, and even clay musicians and acrobats. The attention to detail was staggering. Soldiers wore different armor depending on their rank. Infantry carried crossbows and swords. Cavalry units stood ready with their horses. Generals wore elaborate robes and bore expressions of stern command. But perhaps most remarkable was the sophisticated production system behind this massive undertaking. Analysis revealed that the figures were created using a combination of mass production techniques and individual artistry. Bodies, heads, arms, and legs were made separately using molds, then assembled and customized by skilled craftsmen who added unique details to each figure. It was an ancient assembly line producing art on an industrial scale. The discovery revealed the incredible ambition and power of Xin Zhui, the emperor who unified China and built the Great Wall. Historical records described him as obsessed with immortality, constantly searching for elixirs of eternal life. When those failed, he apparently decided to take an entire army with him into the afterlife. The terracotta warriors were positioned to guard his tomb, which lies nearby under an artificial mountain that has yet to be fully excavated. What makes this discovery even more extraordinary is what we're still learning. The original colours of the warriors, which faded within hours of exposure to air, are being painstakingly restored using new preservation techniques. Ground-penetrating radar suggests thousands more figures remain buried, and the emperor's actual tomb, described in ancient texts as containing rivers of mercury and a ceiling studded with pearls representing stars, remains sealed and waiting. The Terracotta Army represents more than just an incredible archaeological find. It demonstrates the sophisticated organization and artistic achievement of ancient China, the power of its early emperors, and the lengths to which humans will go in their quest to conquer death itself. Discovery number 3, Pompeii. August 24th, 79. Mount Vesuvius erupted with catastrophic force, burying the Roman city of Pompeii under 20 feet of volcanic ash and pumice. In a matter of hours, an entire city was frozen in time, creating the most perfectly preserved snapshot of ancient Roman life ever discovered. The rediscovery of Pompeii began in 1748, but it wasn't until systematic excavations in the 19th and 20th centuries that the true significance became clear. Unlike other archaeological sites where we piece together fragments of the past, Pompeii offered something unprecedented, an entire city preserved exactly as it was at the moment of disaster. Walking through Pompeii today is like stepping back nearly 2,000 years. Streets still bear the ruts worn by cartwheels. Graffiti covers walls with messages of love, political slogans, and crude jokes that prove human nature hasn't changed. Bakeries contain loaves of bread carbonized in their ovens. Taverns still have wine amphoras lined up on their counters. Even fast food restaurants, called thermopolia, remain intact with their marble counters and clay pots that once held hot meals. But it's the human element that makes Pompeii truly haunting. The volcanic ash that destroyed the city also preserved its victims in their final moments. When archaeologists pour plaster into voids left by decomposed bodies, they create casts, showing people exactly as they died: a mother shielding her child, a dog struggling against its chain, a man covering his face against a choking ash. These casts provide an intimate, heartbreaking connection to the past that no other archaeological site can match. Recent discoveries continue to amaze. In 2024, archaeologists uncovered a mansion complete with explicit erotic frescoes that reveal the surprisingly open attitudes towards sexuality in Roman society. Other recent finds include a stable with the skeletons of harnessed horses apparently ready to flee when the eruption began, and a villa where archaeologists found the remains of a man crushed by a massive stone block while apparently trying to escape. The preservation extends beyond just buildings and bodies. Organic materials that normally decay completely have survived, including wooden furniture, leather goods, and even food. Archaeologists have found eggs, nuts, bread, and fruit preserved in the ash. They've discovered scrolls in the library of a wealthy villa, though unrolling them without destroying them remains a technical challenge. Pompeii has revolutionized our understanding of Roman daily life. Rather than the sanitized version presented in textbooks, we see a vibrant, diverse city with people of all social classes living side by side. We see evidence of Roman engineering genius in their sophisticated water systems, heated floors, and urban planning. We also see the less glamorous side: poverty, crime, and the harsh realities of slavery that supported Roman society. The city continues to yield secrets. Only about 2/3 of Pompeii has been excavated, and new discoveries emerge regularly. Advanced techniques like ground-penetrating radar and 3D mapping are revealing hidden chambers and unexplored areas. Each new find adds another piece to our understanding of how Romans actually lived, loved, worked, and died in the shadow of Vesuvius. Discovery number 4. The Rosetta Stone. July 1799, Fort Julien, near the town of Rosetta in Egypt. French soldier Pierre-François Bouchard was helping to demolish an old wall when his pickaxe struck something unusual. What he'd uncovered was a dark granite slab covered in 3 different scripts. But nobody at the time realized they were looking at the key that would unlock 3,000 years of Egyptian history. The stone itself wasn't particularly impressive to look at. About 4 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide, it was broken at the top and bottom, clearly a fragment of something larger. But what made this chunk of rock extraordinary were the inscriptions carved into its surface. The same message was written 3 times, once in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, once in Demotic script, and once in ancient Greek. For over 1,000 years, scholars had stared at hieroglyphs covering temple walls and tomb chambers throughout Egypt, completely unable to read them. These mysterious symbols had remained as indecipherable as alien writing, but now, suddenly, they had what amounted to an ancient translation key. The Greek text could be read immediately, and if it truly said the same thing as the hieroglyphs, then perhaps the ancient Egyptian writing system could finally be cracked. The race to decode the stone became one of the most intense intellectual competitions in history. Scholars across Europe threw themselves into the challenge, but it was a young French linguist named Jean-François Champollion who made the breakthrough. After years of painstaking work, comparing the Greek text with the hieroglyphs, he realized that the mysterious symbols weren't just pictures representing ideas, they were also phonetic signs representing sounds. In September 1822, Champollion burst into his brother's office shouting, "I've got it," before collapsing from exhaustion. He had successfully identified the hieroglyphic names of pharaohs Ptolemy and Cleopatra, proving that hieroglyphs could spell out sounds just like letters in an alphabet. It was the moment that ancient Egypt began to speak again after centuries of silence. The text on the stone itself was surprisingly mundane, a decree from 196 BCE praising the pharaoh Ptolemy V and listing tax exemptions for temples. But its impact was revolutionary. Suddenly, thousands of hieroglyphic inscriptions throughout Egypt could be read. Temple walls revealed their secrets. Royal cartouches identified forgotten pharaohs. Religious texts explained Egyptian beliefs about death and the afterlife. The entire civilization that had built the pyramids and ruled the Nile for 3 millennia was finally able to tell its own story. The Rosetta Stone transformed Egyptology from speculation into science. Before its decipherment, scholars could only guess at Egyptian history and culture based on what Greek and Roman authors had written. Now they could read Egyptian sources directly, discovering that many classical accounts were inaccurate or incomplete. The ancient Egyptians emerged not as the mysterious, mystical culture portrayed by outsiders, but as sophisticated administrators, engineers, artists, and thinkers who had documented their achievements in meticulous detail. Today, the Rosetta Stone sits in the British Museum, where it remains one of the most visited artifacts in the world. Its influence extends far beyond Egyptology. The term Rosetta Stone has entered everyday language to describe anything that provides the key to understanding something previously mysterious or incomprehensible. Number 5. Machu Picchu. July 24th, 1911. High in the Peruvian Andes, American historian Hiram Bingham was searching for Vilcabamba, the legendary lost city where the last Inca rulers had supposedly made their final stand against Spanish conquistadors. Following vague directions from local residents, he climbed a treacherous mountain path that seemed to lead nowhere. Near the summit of a peak called Huayna Picchu, Bingham encountered a small family of Quechua Indians who had been quietly living among ancient ruins, growing crops on the stone terraces that previous inhabitants had carved into the mountainside. What Bingham saw that day would make him famous worldwide. The most spectacular archaeological site in the Americas, perched impossibly on a narrow ridge between 2 mountain peaks, 8,000 feet above sea level. Machu Picchu wasn't actually lost, at least not to local people, but to the outside world, it was a revelation. Here was an entire Inca city that the Spanish conquistadors had never found, never destroyed, never stripped of its gold. The dry mountain air and remote location had preserved buildings so perfectly that they looked as if their inhabitants had simply walked away yesterday. The engineering achievement was staggering. Every building was constructed from precisely cut granite blocks, fitted together so perfectly that you couldn't slide a knife blade between them. No mortar was used, yet the structures had survived 500 years of earthquakes, landslides, and torrential rains. The Incas had somehow transported massive stone blocks up nearly vertical mountain slopes and shaped them with tools that shouldn't have been capable of such precision. The city's layout revealed sophisticated urban planning. There were residential areas for different social classes, religious temples aligned with astronomical events, elaborate water management systems that still function today, and agricultural terraces that maximized growing space on the steep slopes. The famous Intihuatana stone, carved from a single piece of granite, served as a precise astronomical clock, casting shadows that tracked the movement of the sun throughout the year. But who had lived here and why had they abandoned it? Carbon dating and Spanish colonial records suggest Machu Picchu was built around 1450 CE during the reign of Inca Emperor Pachacuti, but was abandoned less than a century later when Spanish conquistadors arrived in Peru. Most archaeologists now believe it served as a royal estate, a sacred center, and possibly a fortress protecting the approaches to the Inca capital of Cusco. Recent discoveries using ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging have revealed that Machu Picchu was even larger than originally thought. Hidden structures lie beneath centuries of jungle growth, and new sections of the city continue to be uncovered. Advanced laser scanning has shown that the terraces and buildings were positioned according to complex geometric principles that took into account the movement of celestial bodies, the flow of water, and the natural contours of the mountain. The site has also yielded remarkable insights into Inca society. Analysis of human remains found in burial caves suggests the population included people from across the empire, not just local residents. Their teeth show evidence of a corn-heavy diet typical of high-status individuals, while their bones reveal the physical demands of mountain life. Artifacts found throughout the site, from bronze knives to ceramic vessels, demonstrate the sophisticated material culture of the Inca civilization. Perhaps most remarkably, new research has revealed that Machu Picchu was built on a network of fault lines, but rather than being a weakness, this was apparently intentional. The Inca engineers designed the city's foundations to move with seismic activity, allowing the buildings to dance with earthquakes rather than resist them. It's a technique that modern earthquake engineers are only now beginning to understand and appreciate. Today, Machu Picchu receives over 1 million visitors annually, making it Peru's most popular tourist destination. But it's also our active archaeological site, where new discoveries continue to emerge, each one adding another piece to our understanding of one of history's most remarkable civilizations. Discovery number 6. Lucy. November 30th, 1974. The Afar Desert region of Ethiopia. American paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson was walking back to his Land Rover after another day of fruitless searching when something caught his eye. Protruding from a gully was what looked like a piece of arm bone. As he knelt down for a closer look, he realized he was staring at something extraordinary. A fossilized elbow joint that was clearly not from any animal he knew. What Johanson had discovered was the partial skeleton of a female hominid who had died 3.2 million years ago. His team would eventually recover 40% of her skeleton, making her the most complete early human ancestor ever found at that time. They named her Lucy after the Beatles' song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds that was playing repeatedly in their camp the night of the discovery. Lucy stood only about 3.5 feet tall and weighed roughly 60 pounds, but she walked upright on 2 legs, just like modern humans. This was revolutionary. Before Lucy, scientists had assumed that our ancestors developed large brains first, then learned to walk upright. Lucy proved the opposite was true. She had a brain about the size of a chimpanzee's, but her pelvis, leg bones, and knee joints were clearly adapted for bipedal locomotion. The implications were staggering. Lucy's species, Australopithecus afarensis, showed that human ancestors were walking upright millions of years earlier than previously thought. Her discovery pushed back the timeline of human evolution and forced scientists to completely reconsider how and why our ancestors came down from the trees and began walking across the African landscape. Analysis of Lucy's bones revealed fascinating details about her life and death. Her wisdom teeth were worn down, suggesting she was probably in her 20s when she died, middle-aged for her species. Her arm bones were longer relative to her legs than in modern humans, indicating she still spent significant time in trees. But her pelvis was perfectly adapted for upright walking, with a broad, bowl-shaped structure that could support internal organs while maintaining balance on 2 legs. The preservation of Lucy's skeleton was itself remarkable. She had died near a lake or river, and her body was quickly buried in sediment that protected her bones from scavengers and the elements. The alkaline soil chemistry of the Afar region created perfect conditions for fossilization, turning her bones to stone while preserving their original shape in extraordinary detail. Recent technological advances have revealed even more about Lucy and her world. CT scans of her bones have shown evidence of muscle attachment points and joint wear patterns that provide insights into how she moved and what activities she performed. Computer modelling suggests she was primarily a ground dweller, but retained the ability to climb trees efficiently, possibly sleeping in them for safety. One of the most intriguing recent discoveries came from analysis of Lucy's inner ear structure. The semicircular canals that control balance were more similar to those of modern humans than to chimpanzees, providing additional evidence that she was well adapted for upright locomotion. Her brain, while small, showed some reorganization compared to apes, particularly in areas associated with tool use and social behavior. Lucy's discovery also opened up entirely new areas of research. scientists began looking more intensively for early human fossils in Africa, leading to discoveries of even older species like Ardipithecus ramidus and Sahelanthropus chadensis. Each new find has added complexity to the human family tree, showing that our evolutionary history was far more diverse than anyone had imagined. The site where Lucy was found has continued to yield remarkable discoveries. In 2016, researchers announced the discovery of Lucy's neighbour, a male Australopithecus afarensis nicknamed Kadanumu, who stood over 5 feet tall. In 2018, they found a nearly complete skull of a different early human species, Australopithecus anamensis, that lived in the same region 4 million years ago. But perhaps Lucy's greatest contribution has been inspiring new generations of scientists to study human origins. Her discovery came at a time when paleoanthropology was dominated by male researchers studying male specimens. Lucy proved that studying female fossils could provide crucial insights into human evolution, leading to more attention to questions about child rearing, social structure, and reproductive strategies in early human societies. Today, Lucy's bones are housed in the National Museum of Ethiopia in Addis Ababa, where they're considered a national treasure. High-quality casts allow researchers worldwide to study her anatomy, while new discoveries in the Afar region continue to fill in details about the world she inhabited over 3 million years ago. Discovery number 7. Lascaux Cave Paintings. September 12, 1940, 4 French teenagers were exploring the woods near Montignac when their dog Robot disappeared down a hole that had opened after a tree fell. Following their pet into the darkness, the boys found themselves in a vast underground chamber whose walls were covered with something that would change our understanding of prehistoric humans forever. Hundreds of paintings created by artists who lived 17,000 years ago. What Marcel Ravida, Jacques Marcel, Georges Agnel, and Simon Cuencas had stumbled upon was the Sistine Chapel of prehistoric art. The cave walls were alive with images of animals rendered with a sophistication that rivaled anything produced by Renaissance masters. Massive bulls dominated the ceiling, some stretching over 16 feet across. Horses galloped in flowing herds. Stags leaped with impossible grace. Bison charged with such realism that visitors could almost hear their thundering hooves. But these weren't crude stick figures or simple outlines. The prehistoric artists had used the natural contours of the cave walls to give their animals 3-dimensional depth. They mixed pigments from ochre, charcoal, and other minerals to create subtle colour variations. They employed sophisticated techniques like shading and perspective that art historians had thought were invented thousands of years later during the Renaissance. The discovery shattered every assumption about our Stone Age ancestors. Before Lascaux, prehistoric humans were viewed as barely evolved cave dwellers focused solely on survival. These paintings revealed minds capable of abstract thought, artistic planning, and aesthetic appreciation. The artists had somehow worked in complete darkness, deep underground, creating masterpieces by flickering torchlight that have remained vivid for nearly 20 millennia. Carbon dating revealed that the paintings were created during the Magdalenian period, when Europe was locked in an ice age and woolly mammoths still roamed the frozen landscape. The artists lived in a world where creating art served no obvious survival purpose, yet they devoted enormous time and effort to decorating caves they may have visited only for ceremonies or rituals. Analysis of the paintings has revealed incredible details about the artists' techniques and the animals they depicted. Many of the creatures shown had been extinct for thousands of years by the time the cave was sealed, suggesting these images may have been based on cultural memory passed down through generations. The artists used the cave's natural acoustics to their advantage, placing paintings in spots where sounds would resonate, possibly as part of ritual ceremonies. Recent technological advances have unveiled even more secrets. Multispectral imaging has revealed paintings invisible to the naked eye, hidden beneath layers of calcite deposits. 3D scanning has shown that the artists deliberately chose specific wall contours to enhance the three-dimensional effect of their work. Some paintings even appear to animate when viewed by flickering torchlight, with horses seeming to gallop and bulls appearing to charge. The cave also contained evidence of the artists themselves: handprints stenciled on the walls, footprints preserved in the clay floor, and even what appears to be scaffolding marks where they constructed platforms to reach high-ceiling surfaces. Analysis of the handprints suggests both men and women participated in creating the art, and that some of the artists may have been missing finger joints, possibly from frostbite or ritual practices. Today, the original Lascaux cave is sealed to protect the paintings from damage caused by human breath and body heat. But the discovery continues to influence our understanding of human consciousness and creativity. These 17,000-year-old masterpieces prove that the capacity for artistic expression, symbolic thinking, and aesthetic beauty has been part of human nature far longer than we ever imagined. Number 8. Ötzi the Iceman. September 19th, 1991. German tourists Helmut and Erika Simon were hiking through the Ötztal Alps along the Austrian-Italian border when they spotted something brown protruding from the melting ice. Thinking it was the body of an unfortunate mountaineer, they photographed the remains and reported their discovery to authorities. What they had actually found was the naturally mummified body of a man who had died 300 years ago, making him the oldest naturally preserved human ever discovered. The body was so perfectly preserved by the alpine ice that, initially, investigators treated it as a recent death. The man's skin was leathery, but intact, his organs were perfectly preserved, and even his eyeballs remained in their sockets. It wasn't until radiocarbon dating was performed that the incredible truth emerged. This was a Copper Age hunter who had died on the mountain sometime between 3400 and 3100 BCE, during the time when Stonehenge was being built and the first pharaohs were ruling Egypt. What made Ötzi extraordinary wasn't just his age, but the completeness of what survived with him. He was found with his clothing, tools and equipment intact, providing an unprecedented window into daily life over 5,000 years ago. His leather shoes were sophisticated, designed for walking across rough terrain and stuffed with grass for insulation. His clothing included a leather belt, leggings, and a grass cloak that would have provided excellent protection against the elements. But it was Ötzi's toolkit that truly amazed researchers. He carried a copper axe with a wooden handle, one of the earliest metal tools ever found. His bow was made from yew wood and stood 6 feet tall, designed for hunting large game. His quiver contained 14 arrows, 2 complete with flint points and feathers, 12 unfinished. He also carried a flint knife, a fire-starting kit, and a small pouch containing dried mushrooms that may have been used as medicine or tinder. Analysis of Ötzi's body revealed fascinating details about his life and death. He was approximately 45 years old when he died, ancient by Copper Age standards, and stood about 5 feet 3 inches tall. His muscles were well developed, suggesting a life of physical activity. His teeth were worn down from a coarse diet, and he had several dental cavities. Most remarkably, his stomach contained his final meal: red deer meat, grain, and pollen from a hop hornbeam tree, allowing researchers to determine he had died in late spring or early summer. CT scans revealed that Ötzi had not died peacefully. An arrowhead was embedded in his left shoulder, and there were defensive wounds on his hands and wrists. Blood from 4 different people was found on his knife and arrows, suggesting he had been involved in violent conflicts before his final encounter. The evidence painted a picture of a man who had fought for his life before finally succumbing to his injuries high on the mountain pass. Recent DNA analysis has provided even more remarkable insights. Ötzi's genome has been completely sequenced, revealing that he had brown eyes, blood type O, was lactose intolerant, and was predisposed to heart disease. He was more closely related to modern Sardinians than to contemporary alpine populations, suggesting significant population movements in Europe since his time. Analysis of his gut bacteria has even revealed what diseases were common in Copper Age Europe. The discovery has also yielded unexpected medical insights. Ötzi had over 60 tattoos, simple lines and crosses made by rubbing charcoal into cuts in his skin. Remarkably, these tattoos correspond precisely to acupuncture points used in traditional Chinese medicine, suggesting that this therapeutic practice may be thousands of years older than previously thought. He also suffered from whipworm parasites, joint problems, and hardening of the arteries. Ötzi's clothing and equipment have provided insights into Copper Age technology and trade networks. His copper axe blade came from ore mined in what is now Tuscany, hundreds of miles away, indicating extensive trade connections. His arrows were made with wood from different tree species, suggesting sophisticated knowledge of material properties. Even his repair kit, containing a bone awl and sinew for mending, demonstrated the practical skills needed for survival in a harsh mountain environment. Today, Ötzi rests in a specially designed freezer at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Italy, maintained at the same temperature as the glacier where he was found. His discovery has spawned an entire field of glacier archaeology, as melting ice continues to reveal artifacts and remains from our ancient past. Every few years, new analysis techniques reveal additional details about his life, making him perhaps the most thoroughly studied individual from prehistoric times. Discovery number 9, Homo naledi. September 13th, 2013. Deep in the Rising Star cave system near Johannesburg, South Africa, carvers Rick Hunter and Stephen Tucker squeezed through a passage barely 8 inches wide, following a route that required them to crawl through spaces so tight they had to exhale to fit through. What they found in a hidden chamber would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about human evolution and the behaviour of our ancient relatives. Scattered across the floor of the chamber were hundreds of fossilised bones belonging to at least 15 individuals of a previously unknown human species. The discovery was so significant that within weeks, paleoanthropologist Lee Berger had assembled a team of scientists small enough to navigate the treacherous cave passages, including several underground astronauts, young researchers chosen specifically for their ability to work in the claustrophobic conditions. The species they uncovered was unlike anything in the human fossil record. Standing about 5 feet tall with brains roughly 1/3 the size of modern humans, these hominins possessed a puzzling mixture of primitive and advanced features. Their shoulders and curved fingers were ape-like, adapted for climbing and life in trees, but their legs and feet were clearly designed for upright walking, and their hands showed the dexterity needed for tool use. What made the discovery truly revolutionary wasn't just the anatomy of these ancient humans, but where they were found. The chamber containing the fossils was accessible only through passages that would have been nearly impossible to navigate accidentally. There were no signs of predator activity, no evidence of a catastrophic flood or cave-in that might have trapped the individuals inside. The only logical explanation was that the bodies had been deliberately placed there. This suggested that Homo naledi, despite having brains smaller than those of chimpanzees, were intentionally disposing of their dead in a specific location deep underground. This behaviour, previously thought to be unique to modern humans and Neanderthals, implied a level of symbolic thinking and social organisation that scientists hadn't attributed to such early hominins. The implications were staggering. Creatures with tiny brains were apparently capable of complex behaviours that required planning, cooperation, and possibly even ritualistic thinking. Dating the fossils proved challenging due to the cave environment, but eventually, researchers determined that Homo naledi lived between 335,000 and 236,000 years ago. This meant they existed at the same time as early Homo sapiens, adding another branch to the already complex human family tree. The discovery suggested that human evolution wasn't a simple linear progression, but rather a complex story of multiple species coexisting and possibly even interacting. The fossil evidence revealed fascinating details about how these ancient humans lived. Their teeth showed they ate a varied diet, including tough, fibrous plants. Wear patterns on their bones suggested they were physically active, spending time both on the ground and in trees. Some individuals showed evidence of injuries that had healed, indicating they cared for injured members of their group long enough for bones to mend. Recent analysis has revealed even more intriguing details. Some of the bones show signs of deliberate modification, possibly for tool use or symbolic purposes. The arrangement of fossils in the chamber suggests the bodies weren't simply dumped, but were placed with some care. Evidence of fire use has been found in other parts of the cave system, though it's unclear whether Homo naledi was responsible for these fires. The discovery has forced scientists to reconsider what it means to be human. If creatures with such small brains were capable of complex behaviours like deliberate burial, it suggests that consciousness and symbolic thinking may have evolved much earlier and in more diverse forms than previously thought. The find has also highlighted how much we still don't know about human evolution and the various experiments in human-like behaviour that occurred over millions of years. Excavations at Rising Star continue to yield new fossils and insights. The site has already produced more hominin fossils than any other location in Africa, and researchers estimate that thousands more remain in the unexplored passages. Each new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle of how our species evolved and what makes us uniquely human. The work at Rising Star has also demonstrated the power of modern collaborative science. The entire excavation was live-streamed, allowing scientists worldwide to participate in the discovery process. 3D scanning technology created detailed models of every fossil, making them available for study by researchers who couldn't physically visit the remote cave site. This open approach to scientific discovery has set a new standard for how major archaeological finds should be shared and studied. Discovery number 10. Denisovan Cave Discoveries. March 2010. In a remote cave in Siberia's Altai Mountains, Russian archaeologists were sifting through sediments that had been accumulating for tens of thousands of years when they found a tiny finger bone fragment, barely the size of a pea. This seemingly insignificant discovery would revolutionize our understanding of human evolution and reveal that our ancestors interbred with not one, but multiple species of ancient humans. The bone came from Denisova Cave, named after an 18th century hermit who had once lived there. The cave had been occupied by humans for over 300,000 years, and archaeologists had been excavating there for decades, uncovering stone tools and other evidence of ancient human habitation. But this particular bone fragment would prove to be different from anything they had found before. When researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology attempted to extract DNA from the bone, they expected to find genetic material belonging to either Neanderthals or modern humans, the only human species known to have lived in the region during that time period. Instead, they discovered something completely unexpected: DNA from a previously unknown human species that had diverged from our evolutionary line over 1 million years ago. The revelation was groundbreaking. Scientists had identified an entire species of ancient humans from nothing more than DNA extracted from a fingertip. The species was named Denisovans after the cave where they were discovered, and genetic analysis revealed they had been a widespread population across Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, yet had remained completely unknown to science. As more excavations uncovered additional Denisovan remains, an extraordinary picture began to emerge. These ancient humans had not only coexisted with Neanderthals and early modern humans, but had actually interbred with both species. Genetic analysis of modern human populations revealed that people living today in Papua New Guinea, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia carry between 3 and 6% Denisovan DNA in their genomes. The implications were staggering. The discovery meant that the story of human evolution was far more complex than anyone had imagined. Rather than a simple family tree, human evolution resembled a web of interconnected species that had split apart and come back together repeatedly over hundreds of thousands of years. Modern humans weren't the product of a single evolutionary line, but rather a mixture of different ancient human species. Recent discoveries have made the story even more remarkable. In 2018, researchers announced they had found a bone fragment from a teenage girl whose mother was Neanderthal and whose father was Denisovan. This direct evidence of interbreeding between two extinct human species provided unprecedented insight into the complex relationships between our ancient relatives. Analysis of Denisovan DNA has revealed fascinating details about their biology and capabilities. They possessed genetic adaptations for living at high altitudes, including changes to their blood chemistry that allowed them to process oxygen more efficiently. These adaptations have been passed down to modern Tibetan populations, helping explain how humans were able to colonize the high Himalayan plateau. The cave itself has yielded remarkable insights into Denisovan culture and technology. Archaeological layers containing Denisovan DNA also contained sophisticated stone tools, bone needles, and jewelry made from animal teeth and shells. Some of the shells came from regions hundreds of miles away, suggesting extensive trade networks or long-distance travel. The Denisovans apparently possessed symbolic thinking and artistic capabilities comparable to modern humans. One of the most intriguing recent discoveries has been Denisovan DNA found at high-altitude sites in Tibet, indicating these ancient humans were living at elevations over 10,000 feet above sea level more than 160,000 years ago. This makes them among the earliest high-altitude specialists in human evolutionary history, predating modern human colonization of these regions by over 100,000 years. The technological advances that made these discoveries possible represent a revolution in archaeology. Scientists can now extract DNA from sediments in caves, revealing which human species lived there even when no bones are found. This environmental DNA approach has identified Denisovan presence at sites across Asia, suggesting they were far more widespread than fossil evidence alone would indicate. Recent genetic studies have also revealed that Denisovans weren't a single population, but rather a diverse group of related species that lived across Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Some of these groups were as genetically distinct from each other as Neanderthals were from modern humans, suggesting that Denisovan may actually represent an entire genus of human species rather than just one. The discoveries continue to reshape our understanding of human migration and evolution. Evidence suggests that Denisovans may have reached Southeast Asia and even Australia before modern humans, potentially explaining some of the sophisticated technologies found at early archaeological sites in these regions. The genetic legacy of these encounters continues to influence human populations today, with Denisovan genes contributing to immune system functions and high-altitude adaptations in millions of people worldwide. Discovery number 11, Troy, the windswept hills of northwestern Turkey. German businessman Heinrich Schliemann stood atop a mound called Hisarlik, clutching a worn copy of Homer's Iliad and scanning the landscape with the fervour of a man possessed. While academic scholars dismissed the epic poem as pure mythology, Schliemann believed every word described real places and real events. He was about to prove them spectacularly wrong. Schliemann wasn't a trained archaeologist. He was a wealthy merchant who had made his fortune in California gold and Russian trade. But his true obsession lay with the ancient world Homer had described. Where others saw fantasy, Schliemann saw a treasure map. Using geographical clues from the Iliad, he had identified this unremarkable hill as the most likely location for the legendary city of Troy. What emerged from Schliemann's excavations was nothing short of revolutionary. Layer after layer of ancient cities lay buried beneath the hill, each built upon the ruins of its predecessor. He had uncovered not just one Troy, but 9 different settlements, spanning thousands of years of occupation. The hill contained Bronze Age palaces, massive defensive walls, and evidence of catastrophic destruction that matched Homer's descriptions of the Trojan War. But Schliemann's most spectacular discovery came in 1873 when he uncovered what he immediately proclaimed to be Priam's treasure, the royal hoard of Troy's last king. Golden diadems, silver vessels, copper weapons, and thousands of gold rings and buttons filled containers hidden within the city walls. The treasure was so magnificent that Schliemann smuggled it out of Turkey and displayed it in Berlin, where his wife, Helen, posed wearing the ancient jewellery for photographs that made headlines worldwide. The discovery transformed archaeology and classical studies overnight. For centuries, scholars had debated whether the Trojan War was history or myth. Schliemann's excavations provided physical proof that Troy had existed, that it had been destroyed multiple times, and that it had been wealthy enough to inspire the epic tales Homer recorded. The boundary between mythology and history suddenly became far more blurred. Modern archaeology has revealed both the importance and limitations of Schliemann's work. His excavation methods were crude by today's standards, and he likely destroyed valuable evidence in his eagerness to reach the deepest, oldest layers. The treasure he identified as Priam's actually predates the traditional date of the Trojan War by over 1,000 years, but his fundamental insight was correct. Troy was real, and Homer's epic preserved genuine memories of Bronze Age conflicts. Recent excavations using modern techniques have revealed that Troy was even more impressive than Schliemann realized. The city was far larger than his excavation suggested, with a lower town extending well beyond the citadel walls. Advanced geophysical surveys have identified harbour installations, confirming that Troy controlled crucial trade routes between Europe and Asia. Analysis of destruction layers has revealed multiple periods of warfare and rebuilding that align remarkably well with ancient literary accounts. The site continues to yield remarkable discoveries. Archaeologists have found Bronze Age seals, Mycenaean pottery, and evidence of trade connections spanning the ancient Mediterranean world. Most intriguingly, they've uncovered clear evidence of a massive siege and destruction around 1180 BCE, precisely when ancient sources placed the fall of Troy to the Greeks. Number 12. Knossos Palace. March 23, 1900, the island of Crete, British archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans began excavating a site local residents called Kefala Hill, searching for evidence of the ancient civilization that had supposedly ruled the seas before classical Greece. What he uncovered would revolutionize our understanding of European prehistory and reveal Europe's first advanced civilization. Within days of beginning excavation, Evans's team began unearthing the remains of an enormous palace complex unlike anything found elsewhere in Europe. Massive stone walls emerged from the earth, decorated with vibrant frescoes, showing scenes that seemed to come from another world. Young men and women leapt over charging bulls in displays of impossible athleticism. Dolphins swam through painted seas. Elegant courtiers in elaborate dress participated in mysterious ceremonies. The palace was vast, covering over 6 acres, with hundreds of rooms connected by a maze of corridors, staircases, and courtyards. Evans realized he had discovered the center of what he termed Minoan civilization, named after the legendary King Minos who supposedly ruled Crete and demanded tribute from Athens. The palace's complexity seemed to match ancient Greek descriptions of the labyrinth where the Minotaur was imprisoned. What made Knossos truly remarkable was its sophistication. The palace featured running water, flush toilets, and an advanced drainage system that functioned perfectly after 3.5 millennia. Massive storage areas contained enormous clay jars that could hold thousands of gallons of olive oil or wine. Workshops showed evidence of specialized crafts, including metalworking, pottery, textile production, and gem cutting. The frescoes revealed a civilization unlike any other in the ancient world. Minoan art celebrated nature, showing gardens, marine life, and landscapes rendered with remarkable naturalism. Women appeared as equals to men, dressed in elaborate gowns with bare breasts and participating in religious ceremonies and athletic competitions. The overall impression was of a peaceful, prosperous society that valued beauty, nature, and artistic expression. Perhaps most intriguingly, Evans discovered thousands of clay tablets covered in an unknown script he called Linear B. For decades, these tablets remained undeciphered, adding to the mystery surrounding Minoan civilization. It wasn't until 1952 that British architect Michael Ventris finally cracked the code, revealing that Linear B was actually an early form of Greek, suggesting that Greek-speaking peoples had eventually conquered or replaced the original Minoans. The tablets revealed the administrative complexity of Minoan society. They recorded detailed inventories of livestock, land holdings, taxes, and trade goods. Palace bureaucrats tracked everything from sheep and cattle to bronze weapons and luxury textiles. The records showed a sophisticated economy based on agriculture, craft production, and extensive maritime trade throughout the Mediterranean. Recent discoveries have expanded our understanding of Minoan civilization far beyond Knossos. Archaeological surveys have revealed that Minoan influence extended throughout the Aegean, with settlements on numerous Greek islands and trading posts as far away as Egypt and the Near East. Advanced imaging techniques have revealed that many Minoan sites were much larger than originally thought, with extensive urban areas surrounding the palace centres. The mystery of Minoan civilization's sudden collapse around 1450 BCE continues to intrigue researchers. Evidence suggests a combination of natural disasters, including massive earthquakes, and possibly the volcanic eruption of nearby Thera, may have weakened Minoan power enough to allow conquest by Mycenaean Greeks from the mainland. The civilization that had dominated the Mediterranean for over a millennium vanished almost overnight, leaving behind only ruins and legends. Discovery number 13. Angkor Wat. January 1860. The dense jungles of Cambodia. French explorer Henri Mouhot pushed through vegetation so thick that sunlight barely reached the ground, following vague directions from local villagers who spoke of ancient temples hidden in the forest. What he encountered when he finally broke through the jungle wall was a sight so magnificent that he could barely believe his eyes. Towers and walls stretching as far as he could see, covered in intricate carvings and rising from the forest floor like something from a fairy tale. Mouhot had rediscovered Angkor Wat, the world's largest religious complex, and the crown jewel of the Khmer Empire that had ruled Southeast Asia from the 9th to 15th centuries. Built in the early 12th century by King Suryavarman VII as a Hindu temple dedicated to Vishnu, the complex covered over 400 acres and represented the pinnacle of classical Khmer architecture and engineering. The scale was breathtaking. The central temple tower rose over 200 feet above the jungle floor, surrounded by 4 smaller towers, arranged to represent Mount Meru, the sacred mountain at the center of the Hindu universe. The entire complex was enclosed by a massive rectangular wall and moat, the latter stretching over 3 miles in circumference and still filled with water after 8 centuries. But it was the artistic achievement that truly amazed early European visitors. Every surface was covered with intricate bas-relief carvings telling stories from Hindu mythology. The famous churning of the ocean of milk stretched for over 150 feet along one gallery, showing gods and demons working together to extract the elixir of immortality from the cosmic sea. Thousands of apsaras, celestial dancing girls, adorned the walls with their elaborate headdresses and graceful poses. As French colonial authorities began systematic studies of the site, the true magnitude of the Khmer achievement became clear. Angkor Wat wasn't just a single temple, but part of a vast urban complex covering over 400 square miles. The Khmer had created the world's largest pre-industrial city, supporting over 1 million inhabitants through sophisticated hydraulic engineering that channeled monsoon rains into an elaborate network of reservoirs, canals, and rice paddies. The engineering accomplishments were as impressive as the artistic ones. The builders had moved over 5 million tons of stone without wheeled vehicles or large draft animals, creating structures so precisely aligned that the central tower frames the rising sun perfectly during the spring equinox. The complex drainage system still functions today, channeling water through hidden passages and preventing flood damage during the monsoon season. Recent archaeological discoveries using ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery have revealed that the Angkor complex was even larger and more sophisticated than previously imagined. Advanced laser scanning has identified hundreds of previously unknown temples, residential areas, and hydraulic features hidden beneath the forest canopy. The urban area may have extended over 1,000 square kilometers, making it larger than many modern cities. Analysis of the complex's decline has revealed fascinating insights into environmental and political factors that led to the abandonment of one of history's greatest cities. Climate data suggests that severe droughts in the 14th and 15th centuries disrupted the water management systems that supported the massive population. At the same time, the rise of maritime trade shifted economic power toward coastal cities, reducing the importance of Angkor's inland location. The conservation challenges at Angkor are immense. Centuries of tropical weather, root damage from massive trees, and increasing tourist pressure threaten the structures. International conservation efforts involving teams from Japan, India, Germany, and other countries work constantly to stabilize buildings, control vegetation growth, and develop sustainable tourism policies that protect the site while allowing access to the millions of visitors who come to experience this wonder of the ancient world. Discovery number 14. Mesa Verde Cliff Dwellings. December 18th, 1888, southwestern Colorado. Ranchers Richard Wetherill and Charlie Mason were searching for stray cattle in the snowy canyons when they climbed to the edge of a cliff and peered across to the opposite canyon wall. What they saw took their breath away. An entire city built into the cliff face itself, with multi-story buildings, towers, and plazas perfectly preserved, as if their inhabitants had simply vanished yesterday. The cliff dwelling they had discovered, later named Cliff Palace, was the largest of over 600 such structures hidden throughout the mesas and canyons of the region. Built by the ancestral Puebloan people between 1190 and 1300 CE, these architectural marvels represented one of the most sophisticated building achievements in North American prehistory. The construction technique was ingenious. Taking advantage of natural alcoves eroded into the sandstone cliffs, the builders created multi-story apartment complexes using carefully fitted stone blocks mortared with adobe. The cliff overhangs provided natural protection from rain and snow, while the southern exposure captured winter sunlight for warmth. In summer, the deep alcoves remained cool and shaded. Cliff Palace alone contained 150 rooms and 23 kivas, circular ceremonial chambers that served as community centres and religious spaces. The largest rooms could house extended families, while smaller storage chambers held corn, beans, squash, and other supplies needed to survive the harsh winter months. The precision of the stonework rivaled anything built by contemporary European masons, with walls that have stood solid for over 7 centuries. What made these cliff dwellings truly remarkable was their integration with the landscape. The builders had intimate knowledge of local geology, selecting alcoves that provided maximum protection while offering access to water sources and agricultural areas on the mesa tops above. Handholds carved into cliff faces and wooden ladders provided access routes so precarious that they served as natural fortifications against enemies. Archaeological evidence revealed a sophisticated society that had flourished in this challenging environment for centuries. The ancestral Puebloans developed advanced agricultural techniques, including terraced farming, check dams, and irrigation systems that maximized crop yields from limited rainfall. They created elaborate trade networks that brought shells from the Pacific coast, turquoise from distant mines, and exotic birds from Central America to their remote canyon homes. The artistic achievements were equally impressive. Pottery found at Mesa Verde sites showed remarkable technical skill and aesthetic sophistication, with black on white geometric designs that influenced southwestern Native American art for centuries. Rock art panels throughout the region depicted everything from hunting scenes to complex religious symbols, providing insights into the spiritual beliefs and daily activities of the cliff dwellers. Recent archaeological research has revealed new insights into why the cliff dwellings were abandoned around 1300 CE, after only a century of occupation. Tree ring data indicates severe droughts that would have made agriculture extremely difficult. Evidence of conflict, including burned structures and defensive walls, suggests that warfare may have increased as resources became scarce. The population appears to have migrated south to the Rio Grande Valley, where their descendants continue to live in modern Pueblo communities. The preservation challenges at Mesa Verde are unique. The same cliff environment that protected the structures for centuries now threatens them through freeze-thaw cycles that crack mortar, wind erosion that wears away sandstone blocks, and water infiltration that weakens foundations. National Park Service conservators work constantly to stabilize walls, replace deteriorated mortar, and protect the structures from both natural weathering and human impact from the hundreds of thousands of annual visitors who come to experience these architectural marvels firsthand. Discovery number 15. Çatalhöyük Ship Burial. May 1939, Suffolk, England. Local landowner Edith Pretty was intrigued by mysterious mounds on her property that locals claimed were ancient burial sites. With war clouds gathering across Europe, she decided to investigate, hiring self-taught archaeologist Basil Brown to conduct excavations. What Brown uncovered would revolutionize understanding of early medieval Britain and reveal connections to the broader European world that historians had never suspected. Brown began with the largest mound, carefully removing centuries of accumulated soil. What he found beneath was the ghostly outline of a massive ship, 90 feet long, its wooden hull long since rotted away, but preserved in stains and iron rivets in the sand. This was no ordinary vessel, but a royal warship, and it had been dragged inland and buried as part of the most elaborate funeral ceremony early medieval Britain had ever seen. The ship's central chamber contained treasures that redefined what historians knew about Anglo-Saxon England. A magnificent helmet with intricate metalwork and garnet inlays bore striking similarities to examples found in Sweden, suggesting powerful connections between British and Scandinavian royal families. Gold belt buckles, shoulder clasps, and sword fittings showed craftsmanship that rivaled anything produced in the contemporary Byzantine Empire. Perhaps most remarkable was a collection of silver bowls and spoons bearing Greek inscriptions, alongside coins from Frankish kingdoms and a ceremonial whetstone that may have been a royal scepter. The burial goods revealed a sophisticated court culture with trade connections spanning from Scandinavia to the eastern Mediterranean. This wasn't the primitive post-Roman backwater that many historians had imagined, but a wealthy kingdom at the centre of early medieval European networks. The identity of the buried king remains uncertain, but historical analysis suggests he was likely Raedwald, ruler of East Anglia in the early 7th century. Contemporary sources describe Raedwald as one of the most powerful rulers in early England, holding dominion over other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms and maintaining diplomatic relations with Frankish courts across the English Channel. What made the burial even more significant was its religious implications. The grave goods included both pagan symbols and Christian artifacts, reflecting the complex religious transformation occurring in 7th century Britain. A pair of silver spoons bore the names Saul and Paul, possibly baptismal gifts, while other objects showed traditional Germanic religious symbolism. The burial represented a moment of transition between old beliefs and new faith, Recent analysis using advanced imaging and chemical techniques has revealed additional details about the objects and their origins. The helmet, reconstructed from hundreds of fragments, shows evidence of battle damage that was carefully repaired, suggesting it belonged to a warrior king who had seen real combat. Isotope analysis of silver objects has traced their origins to mines across Europe, demonstrating the extensive trade networks that supplied the Anglo-Saxon elite. The ship itself has provided unprecedented insights into early medieval naval technology. Analysis of the iron rivets and wood stains has allowed researchers to reconstruct the vessel's design, revealing sophisticated shipbuilding techniques that allowed Anglo-Saxon rulers to project power across the North Sea. The ship was designed for both rowing and sailing, with a shallow draft that allowed it to navigate rivers and coastal waters. Ongoing excavations at Çatalhöyük continue to yield remarkable discoveries. Additional burial mounds have revealed warriors buried with their weapons, a possible royal cemetery that served multiple generations of East Anglian rulers. In 2009, archaeologists announced the discovery of a nearby settlement, possibly the royal hall where the buried king held court, complete with evidence of feasting and craft production that supported the elaborate court culture revealed in the ship burial. The site has also provided crucial evidence for understanding the transformation of post-Roman Britain. Rather than a period of decline and barbarism, the Çatalhöyük burial reveals a society that maintained sophisticated craft traditions, extensive trade connections, and complex political structures. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms weren't isolated backwaters, but active participants in the broader European world, connected to Scandinavia, Francia, and even the Byzantine Empire through networks of trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Discovery number 16. Dead Sea Scrolls, November 1947. A young Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Ed-Dib was searching for a lost goat in the cliffs near Qumran, overlooking the Dead Sea. Throwing a stone into a cave to scare out any animals that might be hiding inside, he heard the unexpected sound of pottery breaking. What he had accidentally shattered would turn out to be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Inside the cave, wrapped in linen and stored in clay jars, were ancient scrolls that had been hidden for nearly 2,000 years. Word of the discovery eventually reached scholars who realized they were looking at biblical manuscripts far older than any previously known. These weren't just any religious texts, but Hebrew scriptures dating back to the 3rd century BCE, including the oldest known copies of books from what would become the Hebrew Bible. As archaeologists systematically explored the surrounding caves, they uncovered a treasure trove of ancient literature. 11 caves eventually yielded over 900 documents, including complete books of Isaiah, Psalms, and previously unknown texts that provided unprecedented insight into Jewish religious thought during the Second Temple period. The scrolls revealed the diversity of Jewish beliefs and practices just before and during the time of Jesus, showing that Judaism was far more varied than scholars had previously understood. The texts included not just biblical books, but also community rules, hymns, commentaries, and apocalyptic writings that revealed the beliefs of a sect many scholars identify with the Essenes. These were Jews who had withdrawn from mainstream society to live in religious communities, believing they were living in the end times and preparing for a final battle between good and evil. Their library preserved alternative versions of biblical texts, showing how scripture evolved over time. Perhaps most remarkably, the scrolls survived because of a historical catastrophe. The Jewish revolt against Rome that began in 686 CE apparently prompted the community to hide their precious manuscripts in desert caves where the dry climate created perfect preservation conditions. The rebels were eventually defeated, their settlement was destroyed, and the location of the hidden scrolls was lost for nearly 2 millennia. Modern analysis has revealed fascinating details about how these ancient texts were created and preserved. Some scrolls were written on parchment made from animal skins, others on papyrus imported from Egypt. The scribes used different writing styles and languages, including Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek, reflecting the multilingual nature of ancient Jewish scholarship. Carbon dating and paleographic analysis have confirmed that different scrolls were created over several centuries, representing a long tradition of religious study and textual preservation. The discovery has had profound implications for biblical scholarship and our understanding of early Christianity. The scrolls show that many ideas previously thought to be unique to Christianity, such as concepts about the Messiah, ritual purification, and community organization, were already present in some Jewish communities. This has helped scholars better understand the Jewish context in which Christianity emerged and developed. Discovery number 17, Nag Hammadi Library, December 1945. Near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, farmer Muhammad Ali al-Saman was digging for fertilizer when his mattock struck something hard buried in the sand. Uncovering a large clay jar, he hesitated before breaking it open, fearing it might contain evil spirits. Instead, he found 13 leather-bound codices containing texts that would revolutionize our understanding of early Christianity and reveal the diversity of belief that existed in the first centuries after Jesus. The manuscripts, written in Coptic, contained over 50 individual texts, including Gospels, theological treatises, and mystical writings that had been banned by Orthodox Christianity and thought lost forever. Among them was the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus that presented a very different view of his teachings than the canonical Gospels. Other texts revealed the beliefs of Gnostic Christians, who emphasized secret knowledge and direct spiritual experience over institutional authority. These weren't crude copies, but sophisticated theological works that had been carefully translated from Greek originals and bound in high-quality leather covers. The codices had been buried sometime in the 4th century CE, probably by monks from the nearby monastery of St. Pachomius, who were ordered to destroy heretical texts after Orthodox Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. Rather than burn these precious books, someone had hidden them in the desert, where they remained perfectly preserved for over 15 centuries. The texts revealed a form of Christianity that mainstream churches had worked hard to suppress and forget. Gnostic Christians believed that salvation came through secret knowledge rather than faith alone, and that the material world was created by a false god rather than the true divine source. Some texts suggested that Jesus had revealed special teachings to certain disciples, particularly Mary Magdalene, who was portrayed as understanding Jesus better than his male followers. The Gospel of Philip, another text in the collection, presented Mary Magdalene as Jesus' companion and suggested she held a special place among the disciples. The Gospel of Mary described her receiving visions and teachings from the risen Christ, only to have her authority questioned by Peter and the other male disciples. These texts offered radically different perspectives on early Christian leadership and the role of women in the church. Modern scholars have used these texts to reconstruct the complex theological debates that shaped early Christianity. Rather than a unified movement with clear doctrine from the beginning, Christianity appears to have been highly diverse, with different communities developing their own interpretations of Jesus' message. The texts that survived to become the New Testament represent the views of the groups that eventually gained political power, while alternative perspectives were systematically suppressed. The discovery has also shed light on the development of Christian monasticism and the intellectual life of early Christian communities. The sophistication of these texts suggests that even alternative forms of Christianity maintained scholarly traditions and produced complex theological literature. The careful preservation and burial of the manuscripts shows that even those forced underground valued learning and textual tradition highly enough to risk their lives protecting these books. Discovery number 18, Çatalhöyük. 1958, the Konya Plain in central Turkey. British archaeologist James Mellart, was surveying the region when he noticed pottery fragments scattered on the surface of a large mound. Excavations revealed something extraordinary. One of the world's first cities, where people had been living in dense urban communities for over 1,000 years, beginning around 7500 BCE. This was urban life, before the invention of writing, before the wheel, before metal tools. What emerged from the excavations challenged every assumption about how early cities developed. Çatalhöyük consisted of hundreds of mud brick houses, built so closely together that there were no streets between them. People entered their homes through holes in the roof, moving across the settlement by walking from rooftop to rooftop. The entire community was essentially one massive interconnected structure, housing up to 8,000 people at its peak. Inside the houses, archaeologists found evidence of sophisticated social organization and artistic achievement. Walls were decorated with elaborate paintings showing hunting scenes, geometric patterns, and mysterious figures that may represent deities or spirits. Some rooms contained installations that appear to be shrines, with bull skulls and other animal remains arranged in patterns that suggest religious significance. The famous mother goddess figurines found throughout the site may represent fertility deities or important ancestors. The residents of Çatalhöyük were accomplished farmers who had domesticated wheat, barley, and other crops that would become the foundation of agriculture throughout the Middle East and Europe. They also kept cattle, sheep, and goats, making them among the first pastoral peoples in human history. Evidence suggests they had developed sophisticated techniques for processing and storing grain, creating food surpluses that allowed large numbers of people to live together permanently. What made Çatalhöyük truly remarkable was its apparent social equality. Unlike later cities with clear elite districts and monumental architecture, the houses at Çatalhöyük were roughly the same size and contained similar artifacts. There were no palaces, temples, or other buildings that suggested the existence of kings or priests. Decision-making appears to have been collective, with the entire community cooperating in construction projects and resource management. The site has also provided unprecedented insights into Neolithic religious beliefs and practices. Many houses contained burials beneath the floors, with family members interred inside their homes after death. Some burials were accompanied by valuable goods like obsidian mirrors and jewellery, while others contained only simple pottery. Wall paintings often depicted wild animals, particularly bulls and leopards, suggesting these creatures held special spiritual significance. Recent excavations using modern techniques have revealed additional layers of complexity. DNA analysis of buried individuals has shown that the population included people from diverse backgrounds, suggesting Çatalhöyük attracted residents from across Anatolia. Isotope analysis of teeth has revealed that some residents grew up elsewhere and moved to the city as adults, indicating mobility and possibly trade relationships across considerable distances. The preservation at Çatalhöyük has been extraordinary, with organic materials surviving that normally decay completely. Archaeologists have found wooden bowls, leather goods, and even textiles that provide rare glimpses into the material culture of Neolithic peoples. Seeds, bones, and other organic remains have allowed researchers to reconstruct the diet and environment of the ancient residents in remarkable detail. Discovery number 19. Göbekli Tepe. 1994, southeastern Turkey, near the city of Şanlıurfa. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt was investigating reports of worked stones on a hilltop when he realized he was looking at carved pillars protruding from the ground. What he began uncovering would revolutionize our understanding of human civilization and force archaeologists to reconsider when and how complex societies first emerged. Göbekli Tepe, which means belly hill in Turkish, turned out to be the world's oldest known temple complex, dating back over 11,000 years. This was architecture on a monumental scale created by hunter-gatherers who supposedly lacked the social organization and economic surplus needed for such massive construction projects. The site predated Stonehenge by over 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by more than 7,000 years. The temple consists of massive circular enclosures containing enormous T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing over 18 feet tall and weighing up to 16 tons. The pillars were carved with intricate reliefs, showing lions, boars, foxes, snakes, and other animals rendered with remarkable artistic skill. Human figures appear as well, depicted with arms and hands carved in relief, suggesting the pillars may represent stylized human forms or supernatural beings. What made Göbekli Tepe revolutionary was not just its age, but what it suggested about the capabilities of Paleolithic peoples. Creating this complex would have required the coordinated labour of hundreds of people over many generations. The builders had to quarry massive stones from bedrock, transport them across difficult terrain, and erect them with precision using only stone tools and human power. This level of organisation was thought to be impossible without agriculture and permanent settlements. The site appears to have been deliberately buried around 8,000 years ago, covered with tons of earth in a massive undertaking that preserved it perfectly until modern rediscovery. Why ancient peoples would invest enormous effort in burying their most sacred site remains one of archaeology's great mysteries. Some scholars suggest it was abandoned as religious beliefs changed, while others propose it was concealed to protect it from some unknown threat. Recent excavations have revealed that Göbekli Tepe was even larger and more complex than originally thought. Ground-penetrating radar has identified at least 20 additional circular enclosures still buried beneath the hilltop. Each enclosure appears to have been built and used for several centuries before being deliberately filled in and a new one constructed on top. The site represents over 1,500 years of continuous religious activity and monumental construction. Analysis of animal bones found at the site suggests that Göbekli Tepe was a place of massive feasting, where hunter-gatherer groups from across the region gathered for religious ceremonies and communal celebrations. The bones come from wild animals, including gazelles, wild cattle, and wild boar, indicating that the builders were still dependent on hunting rather than domesticated animals. Thousands of people may have gathered periodically for festivals that combined religious ritual with social and economic exchange. The discovery has forced archaeologists to reconsider the relationship between religion and civilization. Rather than complex societies creating monumental religious architecture, Göbekli Tepe suggests that the need to create sacred spaces may have driven the development of complex societies. The requirement to organize large labor forces for construction projects may have led to the social innovations that eventually made agriculture and permanent settlements possible. Number 20. The Antikythera Mechanism. October 1900. Greek sponge divers, working off the coast of the small island of Antikythera, were exploring a Roman-era shipwreck when they discovered bronze and marble statues scattered across the seafloor. Among the artifacts they brought to the surface was a corroded bronze object that would prove to be one of the most significant technological discoveries in archaeological history. Initially dismissed as a simple gear wheel, the object sat largely ignored in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens for decades. It wasn't until the 1950s that researchers began to appreciate its true significance. X-ray photography revealed that the corroded bronze contained an intricate system of interlocking gears, unlike anything known from the ancient world. This wasn't just a mechanism, but a sophisticated analog computer designed to predict astronomical events. The device, dating to around 100 BCE, consisted of at least 37 bronze gears, arranged in a wooden case roughly the size of a modern laptop computer. The front face displayed dials showing the positions of the sun and moon against the zodiac, while the back contained additional dials that could predict eclipses and track the complex cycles of planetary motion. Users could turn a hand crank to advance the mechanism through time, watching celestial events unfold with remarkable accuracy. What made the Antikythera mechanism truly extraordinary was its sophistication. The gear ratios were calculated to match the orbital periods of celestial bodies as understood by Greek astronomers. The mechanism incorporated advanced mathematical concepts, including differential gears, a technology not rediscovered until medieval Islamic clockmakers began creating similar devices over 1,000 years later. Some of the gears had triangular teeth, an innovation that wouldn't appear again until the 20th century. Recent analysis using advanced imaging techniques has revealed inscriptions covering the device that function as an ancient user's manual. The Greek text describes how to operate the mechanism and interpret its predictions, referring to eclipses, planetary positions, and the dates of Olympic Games and other important festivals. The inscriptions confirm that this was a practical instrument used for both scientific calculation and calendar keeping. The mechanism's existence has forced historians to reconsider the technological capabilities of ancient Greek civilization. Before its discovery, historians believed that precision gear systems weren't developed until medieval times. The Antikythera mechanism demonstrates that Greek craftsmen possessed sophisticated understanding of mechanical engineering and precision manufacturing that was thought to be impossible with ancient tools and techniques. Analysis of the bronze used in construction has revealed that it was made from high-quality alloy similar to that used for fine statuary, suggesting the mechanism was created by skilled artisans rather than simple clockmakers. The precision of the gear cutting required tools and techniques that pushed ancient metalworking to its limits. Some researchers have suggested that similar devices may have existed but were lost when bronze was recycled for other purposes during later periods. The mechanism represents the pinnacle of ancient scientific instrument making, demonstrating that Greek technological achievement was far more advanced than historians had previously imagined. Number 21. Lady Di, 1971, Changsha, China. Construction workers building an air raid shelter were digging near a small hill called Mawangdui when they struck something unexpected. Instead of solid earth, their shovels penetrated a layer of white clay that released a strange, sweet-smelling gas. What they had uncovered was the tomb of one of history's most perfectly preserved mummies, a Han Dynasty noblewoman whose body had remained virtually unchanged for over 2,100 years. Lady Di, known historically as Xin Zhui, was the wife of the Marquis of Dai and had died around 168 BCE during the height of the Han Dynasty. When archaeologists opened her nested coffins, they found her body floating in an unknown preservative liquid, her skin still elastic and her joints still flexible. Her hair remained attached to her scalp, and when doctors performed an autopsy, they found that her blood was still liquid in her veins. The preservation was so extraordinary that pathologists could determine not only how she had died, but what she had eaten for her final meal. Lady Di had suffered a heart attack, probably brought on by gallstones and a lifestyle of rich food and little exercise. Her stomach contained melon seeds, showing she had died in summer, and her arteries showed evidence of atherosclerosis, making her one of the earliest documented cases of heart disease in human history. But Lady Di's tomb contained far more than just her remarkably preserved body. The burial chamber was filled with over 3,000 artifacts that provided an unprecedented glimpse into the luxury and sophistication of Han Dynasty court life. Silk garments in perfect condition showed the advanced textile technology of ancient China, while lacquered wooden objects demonstrated craftsmanship that wouldn't be surpassed for centuries. The tomb contained complete sets of musical instruments, games, cosmetics, and even a library of texts written on silk. The preservation techniques used in Lady Di's burial have fascinated modern scientists. Her body was wrapped in over 20 layers of silk and placed inside 4 nested coffins, the innermost made of precious cypress wood. The entire burial chamber was sealed with layers of clay and charcoal that created an airtight environment The mysterious preservative liquid that surrounded her body contained mercury and other chemicals that prevented decomposition while maintaining tissue flexibility. Analysis of Lady Di's possessions has revealed details about Han Dynasty beliefs regarding the afterlife. The tomb contained miniature servants, animals, and household objects intended to serve her in death, as well as detailed inventories written on bamboo strips that catalogued her possessions. Food containers held actual provisions for the afterlife, including rice, wheat, and various meats that were still identifiable after 2 millennia. Recent studies using modern medical technology have revealed even more about Lady Di's life and health. CT scans have shown that she suffered from tuberculosis, parasitic infections, and severe back problems that would have caused chronic pain. Analysis of her hair has revealed that she used cosmetics and hair treatments similar to those still used in traditional Chinese medicine. Her perfectly preserved organs have allowed researchers to study disease patterns and medical conditions in ancient China with unprecedented detail. The discovery has also provided crucial insights into Han Dynasty technology and craftsmanship. Silk textiles from the tomb show weaving techniques and dye processes that demonstrate the sophistication of Chinese manufacturing 2,000 years ago. Lacquerware objects reveal finishing techniques that created surfaces as smooth and lustrous as modern plastics. The tomb's contents have helped historians understand the extent of trade networks and cultural exchange during the Han period, with some artifacts showing influences from Central Asia and beyond. Discovery number 22, the Bog Bodies. Northern Europe's peat bogs have yielded some of archaeology's most haunting discoveries. Naturally mummified human remains that provide intimate glimpses into Iron Age life and death. These bog bodies, preserved by the unique chemistry of acidic, oxygen-free peat environments, have retained skin, hair, clothing, and even facial expressions with startling clarity, allowing us to look directly into the faces of people who lived over 2,000 years ago. The most famous of these discoveries is Tolland Man, found in Denmark in 1950 by peat cutters who initially thought they had uncovered a recent murder victim. The body was so perfectly preserved that his peaceful expression and stubbled chin made him appear to be merely sleeping. Carbon dating revealed he had died around 400 BCE during the late Iron Age, but the circumstances of his death were far from peaceful. A leather rope remained tightly wound around his neck, showing he had been hanged. Graubaal Man, discovered in another Danish bog in 1952, told a different but equally disturbing story. His throat had been cut from ear to ear, and his skull was fractured, suggesting he had been brutally murdered before being placed in the bog. Yet his body was so well preserved that researchers could determine he had eaten a porridge made from over 60 different plant species for his final meal, providing unprecedented insight into Iron Age diet and agriculture. These weren't isolated cases. Over 2,000 bog bodies have been discovered across Northern Europe, from Ireland to Poland, most dating to the Iron Age period, between 800 BCE and 200 CE. Many showed evidence of violent death, strangulation, throat cutting, multiple wounds, and blunt force trauma. The consistency of these violent deaths, combined with evidence of ritual treatment, has led many researchers to conclude that these individuals were victims of human sacrifice. The preservation process that created these bog bodies was a natural form of mummification that occurred under very specific conditions. The acidic water, cold temperatures, and lack of oxygen in peat bogs created an environment that prevented bacterial decay while tanning human skin like leather. The same process that preserves the sphagnum moss that forms peat also perfectly preserved human tissue, creating mummies that are in some ways better preserved than Egyptian examples. What makes bog bodies particularly valuable to archaeologists is that they preserve organic materials that normally decompose completely. Clothing made from wool and leather survives intact, showing sophisticated textile production and tailoring techniques. Analysis of bog bodies has revealed fascinating details about Iron Age life, health, and society. Many individuals show evidence of hard physical labour, with worn joints and muscle attachments that suggest lives spent in agricultural work. Dental analysis reveals diets heavy in coarse grains that wore down teeth, while parasitic infections were common. Some bodies show evidence of medical treatment, including trepanation and herbal remedies. The ritual aspects of bog body deposition have provided insights into Iron Age religious beliefs and practices. Many bodies were found with valuable objects like torques and brooches, suggesting they weren't simply executed criminals, but individuals chosen for sacrifice. Some were bound or blindfolded before death, while others show evidence of elaborate preparation, including special meals and body painting. The careful placement of bodies in specific bog locations suggests these were sacred sites where communities performed important religious rituals. Number 23. Pazyryk Burial Mounds. 1929. The frozen steppes of the Altai Mountains in Siberia. Russian archaeologist Sergei Rudenko was excavating burial mounds when he made a discovery that would revolutionize our understanding of nomadic civilizations. Preserved by permafrost for over 2,400 years, the Pazyryk tombs contain the most complete picture of ancient nomadic culture ever found, including tattooed mummies, elaborate textiles, and artifacts that revealed connections spanning from China to the Mediterranean. The burial mounds, called kurgans, had been constructed by the Pazyryk people, a nomadic culture that flourished in the Altai region between the 6th and 3rd centuries BCE. These weren't simple graves, but elaborate underground chambers filled with the possessions needed for an aristocratic lifestyle in the afterlife. The permafrost had created perfect preservation conditions, maintaining organic materials that would have decayed completely in most other environments. What emerged from the frozen tombs was a sophisticated civilization that challenged every stereotype about nomadic peoples. The Pazyryk had developed advanced techniques for working with leather, felt, wood, and metal, creating objects of extraordinary beauty and craftsmanship. Elaborate horse harnesses decorated with gold leaf showed the importance of horsemanship in their culture, while silk textiles imported from China demonstrated extensive trade connections across the ancient world. The human remains were equally remarkable. Several mummies displayed elaborate tattoos covering their arms, legs, and torso, with designs featuring fantastic animals, including griffins, deer, and fish. The tattoos were created using soot-based ink inserted under the skin with needles, showing that body art was an important aspect of Pazyryk identity. One chieftain's tattoos were so extensive and detailed that they function as a wearable art gallery, displaying mythological scenes and cultural symbols. The preservation extended to clothing and textiles that provided unprecedented insights into nomadic fashion and technology. Felt garments showed sophisticated manufacturing techniques, while leather clothing demonstrated advanced tanning and tailoring methods. Chinese silk fabrics found in the tombs revealed trade relationships extending thousands of miles, while Persian carpets showed connections to Middle Eastern civilizations. The Pazyryk were clearly at the center of ancient Eurasian trade networks. Perhaps most remarkably, the tombs contained sacrificed horses buried with elaborate harnesses and saddles. These weren't ordinary riding horses, but specially bred animals, with docked tails and decorated manes, suggesting they were considered sacred or held special ceremonial significance. Analysis of the horses has provided insights into ancient breeding practices and the development of cavalry warfare that would eventually revolutionize military tactics across Eurasia. The burials also revealed sophisticated religious beliefs and practices. Bodies were mummified using techniques that removed internal organs and preserved the skin and hair, then arranged in wooden chambers alongside possessions that would be needed in the afterlife. The inclusion of food, clothing, weapons, and horses suggests beliefs about continued existence after death, similar to those found in other ancient civilizations. Recent analysis using modern techniques has revealed additional details about Pasiric culture and connections. DNA analysis has shown that the population included people of diverse origins, suggesting the Pasiric society incorporated individuals from across Central Asia. Isotope analysis of human and horse remains has tracked migration patterns and dietary practices, revealing that these nomads moved seasonally across vast territories, following traditional grazing routes that had been used for generations. The artifacts found in Pasiric tombs have provided crucial evidence for understanding the Silk Road trade networks centuries before they reached their classical peak. Chinese mirrors, Persian textiles, and Indian beads found alongside locally made objects show that the Pasiric were active participants in long-distance commerce, possibly serving as middlemen who facilitated trade between settled civilizations. Their strategic location in the Altai Mountains placed them at the crossroads of routes connecting China, Central Asia, and the Mediterranean world. Analysis of wooden objects from the tombs has revealed sophisticated woodworking techniques and artistic traditions. Carved animal figures, decorated wagons, and musical instruments show that the Pasiric had developed complex artistic styles that blended influences from multiple cultures. The famous Pasiric carpet, one of the oldest surviving pile carpets in the world, demonstrates weaving techniques that wouldn't be surpassed for centuries and artistic motifs that influenced textile production across Eurasia. Discovery number 24. The Chinchorro Mummies. 1917, northern Chile's Atacama Desert. German archaeologist Max Uller was excavating near the coastal town of Arica when he uncovered human remains that would revolutionize our understanding of ancient mortuary practices. These weren't Egyptian-style mummies wrapped in linen, but bodies that had been artificially preserved using techniques that predated Egyptian mummification by over 2,000 years. The Chinchorro people had been creating mummies along the Pacific coast of Chile and Peru since around 5000 BCE, making them the world's earliest practitioners of artificial mummification. Unlike Egyptian mummification, which was reserved for pharaohs and nobles, the Chinchorro mummified everyone, regardless of age or social status. Infants, children, adults, and elderly individuals all received elaborate preparation for the afterlife, suggesting a culture that valued every member of their community. The mummification process was remarkably sophisticated. Chinchorro morticians would remove all soft tissues and organs, then reconstruct the body using sticks, clay, and plant fibers. The skeleton was reinforced with wooden poles, and the body cavity was filled with organic materials before being covered with clay and painted with red or black pigments. The result was a rigid, doll-like figure that could be kept upright and possibly displayed during ceremonies. What made Chinchorro mummification unique was its evolution over thousands of years. The earliest mummies, dating to around 5000 BCE, were relatively simple, with bodies dried naturally and painted with red ochre. Over time, the techniques became increasingly elaborate, with complex internal reinforcement systems and detailed painted designs. By 2000 BCE, Chinchorro mummifiers had developed multiple styles, including black mummies with elaborate masks and red mummies with naturalistic facial features. The Chinchorro were marine hunter-gatherers who exploited the rich resources of the Pacific coast and the rivers flowing from the Andes. Their diet consisted primarily of fish, shellfish, sea mammals, and birds, supplemented with plants and small land animals. The abundance of marine resources allowed them to develop a complex sedentary culture without agriculture, supporting permanent settlements and the specialized labor needed for elaborate mummification practices. Analysis of Chinchorro mummies has revealed fascinating details about health and disease in prehistoric coastal populations. Many individuals show evidence of ear infections and respiratory problems, possibly caused by spending long hours in cold ocean water while diving for shellfish. Dental analysis reveals diets rich in marine proteins, but also high levels of tooth wear from sand and grit in their food. Some mummies show evidence of violent injuries, suggesting occasional conflicts between groups. The preservation of organic materials has allowed researchers to study Chinchorro technology and daily life in unprecedented detail. Fishing nets made from plant fibers, bone fish hooks, and wooden spear points show sophisticated marine hunting techniques. Textiles made from llama and vicuña wool demonstrate trade connections with highland peoples, while bird feathers used in ceremonial objects show exploitation of diverse coastal environments. Number 25. Taklamakan Desert Mummies. Early 1900s, the vast deserts of western China. Swedish explorer Sven Hedin was leading expeditions across the Silk Road when local guides began showing him naturally preserved human remains emerging from shifting sand dunes. What seemed like a minor curiosity would eventually revolutionize our understanding of ancient population movements and challenge assumptions about who lived in Central Asia thousands of years ago. The mummies found throughout the Taklamakan Desert were unlike anything expected in this remote corner of China. Instead of Asian features, many of the preserved bodies displayed distinctly European characteristics: blonde hair, blue eyes, and facial structures more typical of northern European populations. Carbon dating revealed that some of these individuals had lived in the region as early as 1800 BCE, over 1,000 years before the traditional Silk Road trade routes were established. The preservation was extraordinary, rivaling that of Egyptian mummies, but achieved through completely natural processes. The extreme aridity of the Taklamakan Desert, combined with alkaline soil conditions and temperature fluctuations, had created perfect mummification conditions. Bodies were naturally dried and preserved so completely that clothing, hair, and even facial expressions remained intact after thousands of years buried in the sand. Analysis of the mummies revealed a complex picture of ancient Central Asian populations. The Churchian man, discovered in 1985, stood over 6 feet tall with brown hair and a beard, wearing colourful woolen clothing that showed sophisticated textile production techniques. His grave goods included leather boots, a bronze knife, and arrows with wooden shafts and bronze points, suggesting he was a warrior or hunter from a technologically advanced culture. The Lulan beauty, found near the ancient city of Lulan, displayed classic European features and were felt clothing decorated with intricate patterns. Her hair was braided and adorned with feathers, while her burial included baskets of grain and other food offerings. Isotope analysis of her teeth revealed she'd grown up in the mountains but spent her later years in the desert oases, suggesting significant mobility and possibly trade connections across the region. What made these discoveries truly revolutionary was their implications for understanding ancient population movements and cultural exchange. The presence of European-looking peoples in Central Asia thousands of years ago suggested that the Silk Road trade networks had much deeper and more complex origins than previously understood. These weren't merchants who had travelled from distant lands, but established populations who had been living in the region for millennia. Genetic analysis of the Taklamakan mummies has revealed fascinating details about their origins and relationships to modern populations. DNA studies show they were most closely related to ancient European populations, particularly those from the Black Sea region and Eastern Europe. However, they also show genetic mixing with East Asian populations, suggesting ongoing contact and intermarriage between different ethnic groups throughout Central Asian history. The textiles found with the mummies have provided unprecedented insights into ancient weaving and dyeing techniques. Woolen garments showed sophisticated plaid and checked patterns created using complex weaving methods that wouldn't appear in Europe until much later. The dyes used to create vibrant reds, blues, and yellows came from plants that grew hundreds of miles away, indicating extensive trade networks and knowledge of chemical processes needed to fix colours permanently in fabric. Archaeological excavations at sites throughout the Taklamakan have revealed that these ancient populations lived in sophisticated settlements with advanced irrigation systems, metallurgy, and agricultural techniques. They grew wheat, barley, and millet using water channeled from distant mountain streams, and they produced bronze tools and weapons that matched the quality of contemporary civilizations in China and the Mediterranean. Number 26. The Titanic. September 1st, 1985. 2.5 miles beneath the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, oceanographer Robert Ballard peered at his video monitors in disbelief. After days of systematic searching, using advanced deep-sea technology, his cameras had finally located the most famous shipwreck in history. The Titanic, which had sunk on its maiden voyage 73 years earlier, lay broken in 2 pieces on the ocean floor, her hull remarkably preserved by the cold, oxygen-poor deep-sea environment. The discovery of Titanic wasn't just about finding a famous wreck. It represented a breakthrough in deep-sea archaeology and underwater exploration technology. Ballard's team used a combination of sonar mapping, remote-operated vehicles, and advanced cameras to locate and document the wreck site with unprecedented detail. The images they transmitted to the surface captured the world's imagination and launched a new era of deep ocean exploration. What they found was both heartbreaking and fascinating. The ship had indeed broken in 2, with the bow section relatively intact and the stern section severely damaged from the catastrophic breakup during sinking. Personal belongings were scattered across the debris field. Shoes, suitcases, dishes, and bottles that had belonged to the 24 passengers and crew who had sailed on that fateful April night in 1912. The cold water had preserved organic materials that would have decomposed quickly in warmer environments. The wreck site told the story of Titanic's final moments in vivid detail. The bow section had ploughed into the seafloor at tremendous speed, burying itself 60 feet deep in the sediment. The force of impact had been so great that the forward mast had snapped and fallen across the ship's bridge. Yet despite the violence of the sinking, many areas of the ship remained surprisingly intact, with windows still in place and recognizable room layouts visible through the camera lenses. Perhaps most poignant were the personal artifacts scattered around the wreck. A leather satchel lay perfectly preserved on the deck, its contents protected by the deep-sea environment. Champagne bottles stood upright in the debris field, their corks still intact after decades on the ocean floor. Children's toys and women's jewellery created a haunting reminder of the human tragedy that had occurred at this remote location. The discovery revolutionised public interest in both the Titanic disaster and maritime archaeology in general. Ballard's decision to treat the wreck site as a maritime grave, taking only photographs and leaving artefacts undisturbed, established new ethical standards for shipwreck exploration. The images and video footage he captured were broadcast worldwide, bringing the tragedy to life for new generations and spurring intense debate about the appropriate treatment of underwater archaeological sites. Scientific analysis of the wreck has provided crucial insights into what actually happened during Titanic's final hours. Examination of the hull damage revealed that the collision with the iceberg had created a series of relatively small punctures rather than a single massive gash, but these openings were enough to flood critical compartments and doom the ship. Metallurgical analysis of recovered steel showed that the extreme cold had made the hull brittle, contributing to the catastrophic breakup during sinking. The preservation conditions at the Titanic site have created a unique laboratory for studying deep-sea environments and the processes that affect shipwrecks over time. Marine biologists have discovered new species of bacteria that consume iron and are gradually breaking down the ship's structure. These rusticles, formations of rust and bacteria, are slowly transforming Titanic into part of the ocean floor ecosystem, providing insights into how the deep sea recycles human-made materials. Recent expeditions to Titanic have documented the ongoing deterioration of the wreck and continue to reveal new details about the disaster. The discovery has also sparked ongoing debates about salvage rights and the appropriate treatment of maritime graves. Various expeditions have recovered thousands of artifacts from the debris field, creating museum exhibits that have been seen by millions of people worldwide. However, critics argue that the site should remain undisturbed as a memorial to those who died, leading to international agreements about the protection of underwater cultural heritage. Discovery number 27. The Mary Rose. October 11th, 1982, Portsmouth Harbour, England. After 437 years on the seabed, Henry VIII's favourite warship broke the surface of the Solent in one of the most ambitious archaeological recovery operations ever attempted. The Mary Rose, which had capsized during a battle with the French fleet in 1545, had been preserved by the unique conditions of the harbour floor, creating an unprecedented time capsule of Tudor naval life. The ship's discovery and recovery represented a triumph of marine archaeology and engineering. The Mary Rose had been located in 1971 by amateur divers, but raising the 500-ton hull required developing entirely new techniques for underwater excavation and preservation. The recovery operation involved building a massive steel cradle, carefully lifting the ship using hydraulic jacks, and immediately beginning conservation treatments to prevent the waterlogged wood from collapsing when exposed to air. What emerged from the harbour was essentially a cross-section of 16th century English society. The Mary Rose had sunk so quickly that her crew had no time to escape, and the rapid burial in mud had preserved not just the ship but also the personal belongings of over 400 men who died aboard her. From the admiral's cabin to the gun decks to the hold, every level of the ship contained artefacts that revealed how Tudor sailors lived, fought, and died. The preservation was extraordinary. Wooden bowls still contained the remains of final meals. Leather jerkins and woolen stockings lay where they had been dropped. Gaming pieces were scattered across tables where off-duty sailors had been playing. Musical instruments, including pipes and drums, showed how the crew entertained themselves during long voyages. Even organic materials like rope, cloth, and leather had survived in remarkable condition. The ship's armament provided crucial insights into Tudor naval warfare. The Mary Rose carried an impressive array of cannons, from massive bronze guns that could sink enemy ships to smaller anti-personnel weapons designed to sweep enemy decks clear of boarders. Thousands of arrows, crossbow bolts, and lead shots revealed the variety of weapons Tudor sailors used in combat. The discovery of early firearms alongside traditional weapons showed the transitional nature of 16th century naval technology. Personal belongings revealed fascinating details about the men who served aboard the Mary Rose. Barber surgeons' equipment included bone-handled knives, ointment jars, and even a wooden syringe used for treating wounds. Carpenters' tools were found alongside the wood shavings from their final repairs. Cook's equipment included enormous bronze cauldrons and wooden platters that had fed hundreds of hungry sailors. The human remains found aboard the ship have provided unprecedented insights into Tudor health and society. Analysis of skeletons has revealed the harsh realities of 16th century life. Malnutrition, disease, and frequent injuries were common among the crew. Many sailors showed evidence of childhood diseases and malnutrition, while others bore scars from previous battles or accidents. Archaeological analysis has also revealed details about the ship's construction and modification. The Mary Rose had been rebuilt and upgraded several times during her 34-year service life, with additional gun ports cut into her hull and new weapon systems installed. This constant modification reflected the rapid evolution of naval technology during the early Tudor period, as English shipwrights learned to adapt their vessels for the changing nature of naval warfare. The conservation challenges posed by the Mary Rose were enormous. The waterlogged oak hull contained millions of gallons of water that had to be slowly replaced with polyethylene glycol to prevent the wood from shrinking and cracking. This process took over 20 years, with the ship constantly sprayed with preservative solutions, while visitors could observe the conservation work through viewing galleries. Today, the Mary Rose sits in a specially designed museum in Portsmouth, where controlled humidity and temperature protect the preserved hull while allowing public access. The ship is displayed alongside thousands of artifacts recovered from the wreck, creating one of the most comprehensive pictures of Tudor life ever assembled. Interactive exhibits allow visitors to experience life aboard a 16th century warship, from the cramped crew quarters to the admiral's spacious cabin. The discovery has had profound implications for understanding Tudor naval history and the development of English sea power. Discovery number 28, Uluburun Shipwreck. 1982. Off the coast of Turkey, near the town of Kaş, sponge diver Mehmet Çakır was working at a depth of 150 feet when he noticed strange metal objects protruding from the seafloor. What he had discovered was the oldest seagoing vessel ever found intact, a late Bronze Age merchant ship that had sunk around 1300 BCE while carrying the most diverse cargo assemblage ever recovered from an ancient wreck. The excavation of the Uluburun wreck required developing new techniques for deep-water archaeology. Working at depths that challenged the limits of scuba diving, archaeologists spent over a decade carefully mapping and recovering the ship's contents. Every artifact was precisely recorded and photographed before removal, creating a detailed picture of Bronze Age maritime trade that revolutionized understanding of ancient economic networks. What emerged from the wreck was evidence of trade connections spanning the entire known world of the late Bronze Age. The ship's cargo included 10 tons of copper ingots from Cyprus, tin from Afghanistan, ebony logs from Africa, elephant and hippopotamus ivory, ostrich eggshells, and amber from the Baltic Sea. Gold jewellery, silver vessels, and precious stones demonstrated that this wasn't just a cargo vessel, but a luxury trader serving the elite of Bronze Age civilizations. The diversity of the cargo was staggering. Canaanite jars contained terebinth resin used for incense and medicine. Egyptian scarabs and Syrian cylinder seals showed connections to multiple royal courts. Raw materials included glass ingots that were the earliest known examples of manufactured glass, demonstrating that this technology was being traded internationally over 3,000 years ago. Seeds and pollen preserved in the cargo holds revealed the ship had visited ports throughout the eastern Mediterranean. Personal belongings of the crew and passengers provided insights into the multicultural nature of Bronze Age maritime trade. Weapons included swords and daggers from different traditions, suggesting the crew included men from various cultures. Cylinder seals bearing Mesopotamian names indicated that Babylonian merchants were aboard, while Egyptian scarabs suggested connections to the pharaoh's court. The ship appears to have been crewed by an international team serving equally international clientele. The ship's construction revealed sophisticated naval architecture that allowed Bronze Age merchants to carry heavy cargoes across open seas. The hull was built using the shell-first technique, with planks joined edge to edge and reinforced with internal frames. This construction method, which wouldn't be rediscovered by European shipbuilders until much later, created vessels that were both strong and flexible enough to handle the stresses of heavy cargo and rough seas. The wreck has also provided crucial evidence for understanding the collapse of Bronze Age civilization around 1200 BCE. The Uluburun ship sank just before this catastrophic period, and its cargo represents the height of late Bronze Age prosperity and international trade. The sophisticated economic networks revealed by the wreck's contents make the subsequent collapse even more mysterious, showing how quickly complex civilizations could disappear. The Uluburun wreck has become a symbol of the interconnected nature of the ancient world, demonstrating that globalization and international trade networks existed thousands of years before the modern era. The ship's cargo represents the movement of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices across vast distances, showing how Bronze Age civilizations were connected by maritime trade routes that spanned continents. Number 29. World's Oldest Cave Art. 2024. Deep within the limestone caves of Sulawesi, Indonesia, researchers made a discovery that would fundamentally alter our understanding of when humans first began creating complex narrative art. Using advanced dating techniques on mineral deposits covering ancient cave paintings, they determined that a hunting scene depicting humans pursuing pig-like animals was at least 51,200 years old, making it the oldest known figurative cave art in the world. This wasn't just a collection of simple animal drawings or handprints, but a sophisticated narrative scene showing multiple human figures working together to hunt wild pigs. The artists had used red ochre pigments to create dynamic figures that seemed to move across the cave wall, demonstrating an understanding of composition and storytelling that pushed back the timeline for complex human artistic expression by tens of thousands of years. The discovery shattered previous assumptions about when and where humans developed the cognitive abilities necessary for symbolic art and narrative thinking. Before this find, the oldest known cave art came from Europe, leading many scholars to believe that advanced artistic expression had emerged first among populations that had migrated out of Africa and into more temperate climates. The Indonesian paintings proved that sophisticated art was being created simultaneously across different continents by early human populations. The technical sophistication of these ancient artists was remarkable. They had mixed mineral pigments to achieve different shades and intensities of red, creating depth and movement in their compositions. The hunting scene showed clear understanding of perspective and proportion, with human figures positioned to suggest coordinated group activity. Some figures appeared to be using ropes or spears, indicating that these early humans had developed complex hunting strategies and tools. What made this discovery even more significant was its location in Southeast Asia, a region that had been largely overlooked in discussions of early human artistic development. The paintings suggested that the ancestors of modern Aboriginal Australians and Pacific Island populations had possessed sophisticated cultural and artistic traditions long before reaching their final destinations. This implied that complex symbolic thinking was a fundamental human trait that had developed very early in our species' history. The dating techniques used to establish the age of these paintings represented a breakthrough in archaeological science. Researchers analysed uranium-thorium deposits that had formed over the paintings, providing minimum ages for the underlying art. This method allowed them to date cave art that was far older than the limits of radiocarbon dating, opening up new possibilities for understanding the deep history of human creativity. Recent analysis has revealed additional layers of complexity in these ancient artworks. Some figures appear to be wearing decorative items or clothing, suggesting that personal ornamentation and possibly status differentiation existed among these early human communities. The artists had also incorporated natural rock formations into their compositions, showing sophisticated understanding of how to use the cave environment as part of their artistic expression. The discovery has prompted renewed searches for similarly ancient art in caves throughout Southeast Asia and beyond. Advanced imaging techniques are being used to examine previously studied sites for evidence of older layers of art that may have been overlooked or misidentified. Each new find adds another piece to the puzzle of when and how humans developed the unique cognitive abilities that set our species apart from all others. Number 30. Shanidar Cave, Neanderthal. February 2020. In the Kurdistan region of northern Iraq, archaeologists returned to Shanidar Cave, a site that had already revolutionized understanding of Neanderthal behavior in the 1950s and 60s. What they discovered would once again challenge assumptions about our closest extinct relatives. The first new Neanderthal remains found in the region in over 20 years, along with compelling evidence that these ancient humans had deliberately buried their dead and may have placed flowers with the bodies. The new skeleton, dubbed Shanidar Z, was found in the same area where archaeologist Ralph Solecki had previously uncovered evidence of what appeared to be intentional Neanderthal burials. The latest discovery provided fresh evidence for the controversial theory that Neanderthals possessed sophisticated burial practices and possibly even religious or spiritual beliefs about death and the afterlife. What made this discovery particularly significant was the preservation of the skeleton and its archaeological context. Unlike many Neanderthal remains that consist of isolated bones or fragments, Ötzi represented a nearly complete individual that had been carefully positioned within the cave. The body appeared to have been deliberately placed in a specific location and orientation, suggesting intentional burial rather than accidental death and natural covering by sediment. The skeleton showed evidence of advanced age and healed injuries that would have required care from other group members. Ötzi had survived a crushing blow to the head that had damaged the skull and likely caused blindness in one eye. Yet the individual had lived for years after the injury. This provided additional evidence for Neanderthal compassion and social cooperation, showing that groups cared for disabled members rather than abandoning them. Soil analysis around the burial revealed concentrations of flower pollen that were far higher than would be expected from natural accumulation. The pollen came from plants that still grow in the region today, including varieties that have medicinal properties or symbolic significance in modern Kurdish culture. While some researchers remained skeptical about intentional flower burial, the evidence suggested that Neanderthals may have had sophisticated relationships with their environment and understanding of plant properties. The discovery has reignited debates about Neanderthal cognitive abilities and cultural practices. If Neanderthals were indeed burying their dead with flowers, it would indicate abstract thinking, symbolic behavior, and possibly religious beliefs that were previously thought to be unique to modern humans. Such practices would suggest that the cognitive differences between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were smaller than many scientists had assumed. The cave appears to have been occupied intermittently over tens of thousands of years, serving as a shelter during harsh weather and possibly as a sacred site for burial rituals. Evidence suggests that Neanderthal groups returned repeatedly to specific locations, maintaining territorial boundaries and cultural traditions across many generations. From ancient cave painters working by flickering torchlight to modern scientists using DNA analysis and space-based imaging, these 30 discoveries represent some of humanity's greatest archaeological achievements. Each find has fundamentally changed how we understand our past, revealing that human civilization is far older, more sophisticated, and more interconnected than we ever imagined. These discoveries prove that archaeology isn't just about digging up old objects. It's about reconstructing the human story, understanding how our ancestors lived, loved, struggled, and dreamed. Every artifact tells a tale, every site reveals secrets, and every discovery adds another piece to the vast puzzle of human existence. The most remarkable aspect of these finds is that most happened by accident. This reminds us that countless secrets still lie buried beneath our feet, waiting for the next curious individual to stumble upon the discovery that will rewrite history once again. As technology advances and new techniques emerge, we can only imagine what revelations await. Perhaps tomorrow, someone will uncover evidence that pushes back the timeline of human civilization even further. Maybe satellite imaging will reveal lost cities beneath jungle canopies, or DNA analysis might unlock the secrets of ancient manuscripts that have resisted translation for centuries. The adventure continues, and the greatest discoveries may still lie ahead. So leave a like and subscribe to join us on this ongoing exploration of the unsolved mysteries of this world. Sweet dreams, fellow guardians of human wisdom.